and I'm messing around with some stuff. I'm sitting.
It's the Schick Show. It's the Schick Show. It's the Schick Show.
Brings it right to you. So, well, hey, man, I'm here with Pastor Troy Kaufman, and still interesting to me. After all these years, your pastor, Troy Kaufman. We grew up close enough together. It's not like we hung out a lot, but we knew each other. We had some very mutual friends, and uh, we were neighborhood people. Um, I wanna learn a little bit. After all these years of knowing you, I would love to know how this journey goes from, the guy in the yearbook, and you know what I'm talking about.
Everybody knows who you're
I'm a
talking
little
about.
bit closer to you with them.
Everybody knows who you're talking
Everybody
about.
knows, right? So we go from that guy to the guy that's standing in front of a congregation of people and leading them on their journey of faith. So let's start a little bit about how, where you grew up. You grew up here in Hartford City.
Yes.
Did you live here your whole life?
Whole life.
Okay.
Born and raised.
Yeah. And so graduated from Blackford High School.
Yes. 91.
Yep.
That's the 91.
And
Actually grew up in Hartford City. Grew up on the south side of town. Lived all over the place. Grew up, we'd get just enough money to get into a place, and then the eviction notice would come. And so we would stay for enough time, and then we would get evicted, and we would look for a new place. And so I've lived, I took my kids around as they got older and went around to all the places that I'd lived. And there's like 27 houses that I've lived at in Blackford County,
oh my gosh.
from the time I was born until the time I left home. So
It's really interesting. I had Tim Norris as a guest a couple weeks ago, and he had a very similar story where, they would live in a place long enough, and here comes the eviction notice or whatnot, and had to move to somewhere else. And he was doing the same thing where he was chronicling where all he had lived in Hartford City and trying to see which ones were still in existence.
yeah, I think one of my favorite places is when they first built Valley View Apartments.
Okay.
Brand new. We were the first family to move in to apartment 302. And I felt like the Jeffersons. We were moving on up.
Moving on.
It felt great. I didn't realize it was for, people that didn't have the income that others. I just thought we struck it rich. And I
Yeah.
thought we were moving into this brand new apartment complex. Met some really good friends out there over the years. And so it's one of my fondest memories is Valley View Apartments.
It's really interesting. I was thinking about how long they had been there. Do you remember when that was?
I'm going to say it would have probably been 82, 83,
Wow.
84, somewhere around there.
See, growing up, I grew up across from the junkyard on Chestnut Street, which my old house is now a retention pond, part of the junkyard. But we didn't venture that way a whole lot. Most of my bike riding happened between
The junkyard and the pool.
junkyard and the pool. That's exactly it. Or to William Reed, and then back. So I didn't go to the south side a lot, but when I did, we would always go out to the pits
Hmm.
and ride back in the pits. Little did we know that we probably shouldn't have been anywhere near the pits without some sort of protection gear. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Uh, but we were out there riding our bikes, and I just remember, I don't even know who it was, but we're riding along Ritter Road, 9th Street, and they just took off to the left down into the ditch line. And I'm like, we're going to die. I was probably 12 years old, 10, 12 years old. And they just rode straight down into the ditch. They're like, follow me. And boom, there we were. And we get back there and there's like 10 kids back there riding their BMX.
I kind of feel like back then everybody was riding bikes and
Absolutely.
they were everywhere. We rode all over town.
So Ryan Reed and I were talking about BMX bike culture now for people in their late 40s, 50s, and how BMX culture now is, I need to get my old bike back.
Mm.
And I've been looking for my SE Basher since 1990-ish. I sold it when I got a car. I had a 66 Chevy C10, and I sold that bike not long after I got that truck.
Okay.
God, I'm kicking myself in the butt. I saw one on eBay for $4,500.
Wow. Wow.
What an idiot.
Yeah.
But you don't know,
You don't think
you
of
know?
that.
But I don't even know who I sold it to.
Yeah.
And it had to be somebody here in town,
Yeah.
you know? I thought maybe it was Mike Roberts. After he passed away, I reached out to his daughter and I'm like, hey, Desiree, did you happen to see a chrome BMX bike up in there?
I remember Mike riding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, we all
long
did.
before Harley.
Oh man. And if like for the longest time, I didn't have one of the bikes. You know what I mean?
Right.
I didn't have a cool bike. I had
Puffy.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just something we scrapped together, a Rampar that was painted.
Yes.
But then when my dad finally took me and bought one, I thought I'd made it,
Yeah.
you know, and we definitely hadn't made it. We were living in a home I wouldn't take friends to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So 27, 27, man.
It's a lot of houses. A lot of them we were in for a month, maybe 2 months. And then we were gone.
Yeah, I wonder how do you do a change?
That's a very interesting question. But going back to that, single mom, 3 kids, all 3 of us kids had different dads.
Yeah.
She had me when she just turned 15 when she had me.
Wow.
So dropped out of high school, really doing the very best that she knew how to do. And then she had her own struggles on top of that. So, but really doing the best that she knew how to do. But like so many, didn't know what she was doing.
Yeah. Do you wonder, being an educator, I knew so many of you,
Hmm.
coming through and I know so many of you now and knowing that they overcame. Not everyone overcomes and has a successful life, and whatever success looks
Hmm.
like. And I've said before, if success is I live in a van down by the river and that's what your goal in life is, then be the best being down by the river person that ever lived. But
That was a goal of mine at one time.
okay, that doesn't surprise me, not one bit. But I think about those kids that I saw coming through as a teacher and as an administrator, and I knew that the majority of them are going to be okay. They just needed someone to let them know we're here. We're here. We support you. We love you. And it's going to be okay. And I think sometimes for me, uh, I needed someone to give me permission for it to be okay. And I tried to do that with those kids because I saw you,
Yeah.
and we turned out okay.
Yeah, we did.
And so many of those others are going to too. The kid that makes the face in the yearbook is going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, folks. And so you've come from that guy, single mom, siblings from number of fathers to graduate, get us to high school.
Yeah, getting into high school, man, mom was always looking for that right guy, and so we had a lot of different guys coming and going, and me being the oldest of the 3, always pushing back on every guy that came into the house because I knew he wasn't going to last any longer than the homes that we lived in. So for me, I think one of the things that got me to where I was searching for acceptance, never
Mhm.
having that sense of belonging as a result of that lifestyle. Um, I went to church. I got invited to church, and that was a big part, even way back then. That was a big part of someone saying that they care. And that's
Mhm.
what I needed. You talked a little bit about that just a minute ago. What our kids need is that someone that says they care. I found that in the local church, and I found it in several churches. And so I would go to a church on Sunday night and then a different church on Wednesday and a different church on Sunday. And I really was just seeking that attention,
Mhm.
that love, seeking that stability that it offered. I think that's kind of what got me to high school. And then when I got to high school, obviously kind of walked away from that a little bit, started hanging out with my own friends and really experimenting with just different things, started drinking and doing the whole marijuana scene, and man, fell in love with that. Thought that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Mm.
There was a time in high school that I really wanted to have the largest pot farm in the state of Indiana. That's what my dream was. And God took all of that away from me. Met this girl in high school and ended up marrying her right after I got out of high school, and we're still married today, but wasn't always easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Did she know you had these big dreams?
She did. In fact, we had like the party house, and we had a lot of people that came over to the party house. She'd been there many times. We had, believe it or not, Budweiser cans Velcro to the ceiling, and it was just a party house where anybody from I'll just name a few people. Dan Cairns used to come over all the
Oh yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
Darren McDermott, Chet come over all the time. We just had a group of people. Tommy Heiser and Ryan Smith.
Yeah.
It's just a party house, and she would come over, and she saw me in that. I don't know what she saw in me, but she saw me in that lifestyle. Henry Baker, you remember Henry?
Oh yeah. Man. his, his dad's got tools, he can fix it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I too had a party house. But I don't ever remember coming to your party
Yeah.
house. I had a party house in Montpelier when I lived with Kevin Brubaker. And when I was not working, I would throw kegger parties. My
Yeah.
band would come in and play, and we'd throw a kegger party. And sometimes I'd get the motorcycle inside and do a burnout and just do dumb stuff. But I don't remember you ever being there. And I don't remember ever being at your place.
So ended up going into the Marine Corps in '91, and so we might have just missed.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing you on the strip a lot.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe that
Always
in
cruising.
'91, seeing you
Oh,
cruise a lot, and we had that place where we always hung out right there at the old KFC,
That's right.
Subway.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, but
Yeah.
that was our spot.
Interestingly enough, that's where AC and I did a lot of preaching.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I would preach and he would interpret.
That might have been where I found Jesus.
Could very well be.
You guys might have been the inspiration.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know AC really well too. So
That guy. Good grief. So now Marines. What led you to the Marines?
yeah, this is crazy. I told you I met my wife in high school. Her dad was a Marine.
Yeah.
And he did not like me.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, her true story, going back to that yearbook picture, her mom, she was going through a yearbook, and her mom saw that picture of me, and she said, if you ever bring a guy home like this, I will kill you. That's the guy that she brings.
Oh man, she's like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's test it.
Mom didn't know it was me for a long time. We told her much later. But anyway, her dad was a Marine.
Yeah.
I had no plans, no vision, no hope. I was just glad I graduated high school.
Right.
I made it. That was my goal. So I had nothing else to really go for. So in order to win his approval, go to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And it worked. It worked.
Worth it.
Yeah, it worked. It was the hardest thing that I ever did. You got to understand, I grew up without any discipline,
Yeah.
without having that father in my life. My real father died when I was in first grade.
Okay.
His name was Troy Kaufman. So I never really knew him anyway. So it wasn't like this big loss, but I just grew up not having a dad.
Mm.
When I was 18 years old, I was walking down the street one day. I was actually walking right by the post office, and a guy yelled out to me and said, "Hey, you are so-and-so's son." And I said, "No, my father died a long time ago." And he said, you might want to go ask your mom. And so I remember 18 years old, I go home and I'm asking my mom, "Hey, so-and-so just said this." And she just started crying. And so I took that as, yes, I'm so-and-so's son. Looked this guy up, found this guy through his son. His son told me that he would not want to meet me, that if he did meet me, he would probably kill me. But his son kind of agreed that we looked alike. And I really went many years after that thinking he was my father. But I went into the Marine Corps. And so while I was in the Marine Corps, he ended up passing away. He had an alcohol addiction, which I thought, yeah, he's my dad. He ended up passing away. So once again, that dream that you always have of having a dad, someone to throw ball with, someone to catch, someone to belong to was kind of just thrown away because this was the second dad that I felt like I lost, even though I never knew him.
Sure.
The opportunity was gone. But then when I'm in my 40s, I'm at my mom's house and she says, I still think so and so's your dad. And I'm like, what? And
Out of the blue.
out of the blue, like she's, mom has a vitamin B12 deficiency now, so she doesn't always remember
Okay.
things. And she says, I think so and so's your dad. And first time I've heard this, I'm 40 years old.
Yeah.
So I remember getting online and I'm searching and searching and searching, and I find this guy. He lives in Ossian, Indiana. So I reach out to him. We go over to, we meet in Bluffton at the corner cupboard, have breakfast, and we take a DNA test. Comes back, and we meet again to get the answers, and he is my dad at 40 years old.
Oh my gosh.
He has 3 kids. Shows me pictures. I show him pictures of my kids. I know I'm fast forwarding, but it kind of plays into the story a little bit. And at the end of the conversation, he says, your mom's a good person. She did the best she could. I would love to have a relationship with you, but if the rest of the family found out, my life would be over. And so we're going to end it here. So that desire, that wanting to belong, I felt like this is the 3rd time now that I really wanted to have a dad. And that dream was crushed. I remember going home that night and I was just broken. At 40 years old, I'm broken. And I was talking to my wife and my daughters. They all knew this journey. I said, hey, let's change our name. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, Kaufman means nothing. I don't have a father. I never liked the name. I got made fun of all throughout school, and, let's change our name. And so it really brought in a lot of fun that night. We had a great conversation. It brought in some laughter, and we just started coming up with some off the wall names.
Oh, you're just going to pick a name.
We're just going to pick a name. Yeah, let's change our name.
Wow.
Why do we want to beat ourselves up and be called Kaufman the rest of our life with it? That name is meaningless to us. But anyway, that's kind of my story. Never had a father, always wanted, but never really had a father. And it felt like came close 3 times.
I'm just having a moment here. I'm sorry. I got to point this out. So you have no boys.
No boys.
The name doesn't move anyway.
No.
Interestingly enough, I've learned through ancestry and through stories and verification through birth certificates that my dad's dad, my grandfather, my grandpa Schick, who I never knew, my dad didn't really even know, his last name should have been Settlemeyer.
Hmm.
He was not legally adopted, but just the times back in the 30 or the early 1900s where you just absorbed. He was an illegitimate child who my great grandma wouldn't have had a relationship with, just but our last name should have been Settlemeyer. And I kind of had those same wonderings of what does Schick do for me now? But I don't have boys. It doesn't move forward for me anyway. It's really interesting. It just kind of hit me.
Yeah.
But it does have meaning. You are who you are.
Right.
Does the name really identify us as our beings,
It doesn't. But as someone wanting a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
it meant everything. In fact, there was a passage of scripture. I kind of wrote this down. It really spoke to me. In 2 Corinthians 6:18, it says, and I will be your father and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty. And so that fatherhood that I looked for, I really found in my faith. Like I have a heavenly father who has always loved me, who chose me, who created me, who had a plan for me. And I found comfort in that, specifically. And when you find comfort in that, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what my name is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it took me on that journey of finding comfort and peace
Mhm.
and knowing that I have a heavenly Father who loves me.
I can't help but also see the "you'll deny me 3 times"
Yeah,
piece in there as well.
yeah,
You've been denied 3 times
yeah,
as a son.
yeah. And I've denied my heavenly Father 100 times.
Yeah, I try not to say it out loud.
Yeah,
My actions sure do speak loudly.
but I did, and then I met Scott Schick and AC Jones preaching at Kentucky Fried Chicken one night.
You're welcome. Yeah. Oh,
I get
gosh.
asked a lot. So I get asked a lot, where did you learn how to be a dad? Because you're such a great dad.
Yeah.
And I've really thought about that because people ask me that all the time. I have three amazing daughters,
You
two
do?
school teachers, one who went to school to be a teacher, and she went to school, graduated Ball State, wanted to be a teacher, and decided to be a stay-at-home mom instead.
Yeah.
And I said that the thing that kind of drive me to be the dad that I am was I always wanted to be the dad that I never had.
Mm.
So I always had this dream of what it would be like to have a dad.
Mhm.
I wanted a dad that was involved in my life. I wanted a dad that would give me a hug. I wanted a dad that would say they were proud of me. So I had this dream of what a dad would be. And I just chose early in life when I had my daughters, I was going to be that dad,
Yeah.
the dad that I never had. And so that's kind of what's driven me. And now I get to be the grandpa
Yeah.
and loving that as well.
That's pretty amazing.
So
Yeah. So how are the Marines? How did that play in? Tell me, I would love to know that first, what is it, is it 12 weeks? Is
man,
that
the moment I got off the bus, so when we went in, they treat you like royalty.
yeah.
I mean, the
Oh, yeah.
night before we went out to steak dinner, limo ride to the
Oh.
restaurant. I mean, I'm thinking this is what I've been waiting for: limo ride to the restaurant, steak dinner downtown Indianapolis. Next day, we get on an airlines. We're flying out. They pick us up there on a bus, and as soon as we got on the bus, it was like a light switch flipped. And I mean, it was every word imaginable. We're maggots. It is intense, and they don't turn that off. I mean, it is a shock and awe that keeps on going. Initially, specifically for like the first 6 weeks, and then it starts to die down a little bit, but it rocked my world. I was scared to death. Like, what did I do? How do I get out? Indiana, if you live in Indiana, you actually go to boot camp in California.
Okay.
If you live in Ohio, the Ohio River is the cut-in point. You would go to boot camp in North Carolina.
Okay.
Or South Carolina, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I went to San Diego, MCRD, and there's a fence that separates the training site from the airport. And I can't tell you how many days I dreamed of jumping that fence and just making a run for it because those planes were coming and landing, and I'm like, what am I in for? And it rocked my world. It was definitely physically the hardest thing I've ever done, mentally the hardest thing I ever done. They were on it. I mean, from day one, from the moment they got on that bus, it rocked our world.
When I think about your journey, just your faith journey,
Yeah,
boy, there was a plan. There was a plan in place.
there was.
There was a plan in place. Did you get married? You got married while you were in the Marines.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Went in the Marine Corps. They give you like 3 choices that you can pick that you want to have your duty station. And I wanted to go to North Carolina. That was actually the closest because, I was in love, and that's the whole reason I'm doing this, because I have this plan. I want to get married, and
Right.
I want her dad to be proud. And so I put North Carolina. My second choice was California, and my third choice was Hawaii. It's only 3 choices you got.
Yeah.
They sent me to Hawaii. Yeah. So it was, and that was tough, being away from home. I don't want to admit this, but you could almost say that I really was a mama's boy, and being raised by a mom and not having a father figure in my life. I'm away from home. When you're in the Marine Corps at 18, you're allowed to drink legally. So I was already drinking in high school. Now I get to drink as much as I want, and turned to alcohol in the Marine Corps and drank quite a bit. got married in the Marine Corps. I flew home on a Saturday, uh, got married on a Sunday, and flew back out on Monday.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So that was kind of crazy.
Congrats.
Yes. And then, you know, we were planning on her coming out to Hawaii. Um, and what happened, we had saved up some money to get her a plane ticket. And once she got there, she would be command sponsored, which means the Marine Corps would then pay for everything.
Okay.
She's flying in the air with my sister to come out, and I get orders to Korea.
Oh,
And so they're like, we know she's coming, and this is while she's in the air. We know she's coming, but she's not going to be able to stay. We're not going to be able to give her command sponsorship because you're going to Korea. And so that just kind of like crushed us. So she stayed for, I think they stayed about 4 weeks until we really ran out of money. And then she came back home. It was during that time that obviously she got pregnant. Ended up having our first daughter. And after we had our first daughter, I got sent to Okinawa. And so I was gone for a year. And that's why ultimately I ended up getting out, was I didn't want to be a dad that was away.
Yeah.
I grew up with that, and
That's
I
right.
didn't want to be that for my own kids.
Yeah.
So
Differences between Korea and Okinawa?
Yeah, I think Korea, the part we were in was there was a lot more poverty,
Okay.
a lot more brick and mortar, a lot more fences, a lot more. Um, the part that we were in was just a lot hotter.
Okay.
uh, where I felt like, you know, when I went to Okinawa, it was somewhat Americanized. There was a lot of influence there,
Yeah.
lot of lights, a lot of, you know, a lot of people.
Okay. I've been watching a show. Um, I think it's called Blue Zones or something like that. It's on Netflix, and it's about where the oldest people in the world live, like people who are living extended lives, you know, into the hundreds. So the most centurions, and Okinawa is one of those spots. That's why I was kind of wondering, you know, what that looked like, because Korea does not show up in that.
Yeah.
It did nothing. None of them showed up there. But
Mm.
there are a few spots around the world where people are living into their hundreds, and they base a lot of it on activity.
Lot of farm and you know, farmland, and you know, there's poverty in Okinawa as well, but it's not the same, at least in the areas that I was in, that I spent.
Sure. Now, when you came back to the States, did you come back to Indiana?
Came back to Indiana. Yes,
Okay.
ended up going to Fort Wayne, and was there for about 2 months before I ended up getting out. That's where I got separated from, was Fort Wayne. They weren't going to send me anywhere else for just 2 months
Sure.
to finish my time, so I went to Fort Wayne.
Okay. And then you guys together start your life.
Yeah, so I got out, and man, I had no idea what am I going to do, and so I took the first job I could get. It was actually Sinclair Glass. I worked there 3 months and quit. Said I didn't want to do this. It was hot. They wanted to make me a supervisor. I said, I'm sorry, no, thank you. Went from there to a place called Western Wheel in Huntington.
Yep.
We made rims for Ford, and same thing. Worked there for about 3 months, and felt like didn't want to be there. It was hot. That was as close to hell as I wanted to be. You know, we'd pull rims right off the mold, and man. And then from there, I went to Bailey's. I think everybody has worked at Bailey's at one time or another.
Yeah.
Worked there and really kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I was on rad support.
Yep.
That was my favorite. It was fast paced, and
Yeah.
you know, I got really good at using that router.
Oh,
and,
man.
man, I could speed through that, and we'd have races, and
Oh, yeah.
we had a lot of fun at Bailey's. But ultimately, I knew I didn't want to be in a factory every day. Even there was a lot of, you know, fiberglass all over you. You were itching. So I went into trucking. That's what I did in the Marine Corps. I was a truck driver. I drove an off-road semi.
Oh, okay.
I was with the Marine Wing Support Squadron, and so learned how to drive, you know, these large vehicles. Anything the Marine Corps had, I was qualified to drive. So I thought, well, I'm just going to drive, and actually went into management instead. Got hired for a company called Overnight Transportation, and they are an LTL carrier. They were the largest non-union LTL carrier back in the day, and did very well with overnight transportation. Moved up the ladders pretty quick, and we traveled all over the place. We went out to Virginia, we went to Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Ohio, and was there for about 10 years, and ended up going into the ministry.
Hmm. So what drew you
To the
that
ministry,
ministry? Yeah.
yeah. So in 1995, I got out of the Marine Corps, and I was drinking pretty heavily. Um, we had already had one daughter. Um, my wife gets pregnant again. We have another daughter. We have our third daughter in 1998, and we have two girls back to back within 10 months.
Mm.
It was insane, and I'm drinking a lot, just trying to keep things together. And long story short, allowed alcohol to really kind of take over. We ended up losing our first home that we bought, filed bankruptcy. Bills, I would come home, the utilities would be turned off. I was at rock bottom. I mean, it's hard to explain because most people, when they look at me, would never guess that I had that big of a problem with alcohol. Except for the people that knew me really well that were in my circle at that time. But lost everything. My wife finally got to the point where she says, I'm not doing this anymore. And she took the girls and she moved out. And when she did, at first I kind of like, yeah, I don't have to listen to her nag anymore. I can drink as much as I want. And it was great. I loved it. That lasted for just a few short months. And man, I'm alone. I'm sitting in this house. I don't even have utilities turned on. And I'm drinking all the alcohol that I want, but I don't have a family and I don't have my kids. And it just brought me back to my childhood, always wanting that dad and not having him. And I'll never forget, I was at home, and I grabbed a Bible and I said, God, if you'll fix my marriage, I'll follow you the rest of my life. And I opened up my Bible, and there's a key verse in the book of Ephesians that I really wanted to kind of share today. It just rocked my world. It says, even before God made the world, he loved us and he chose us in Christ to be holy and without fault in his eyes. He decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Christ Jesus. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. And for the first time, wrestling with everything that I had wrestled with, I felt like I belonged, and it hit home. And then I began reading I read the whole book of Ephesians that night. And it just spoke to me. It spoke about marriage, it spoke about parenting, spoke about faith and belonging. So all the answers that I was seeking, I read, and it was right there in the book of Ephesians. And so I made this deal with God, and I don't believe you can make deals with God, but I made a deal with God.
Yeah.
And the next day, I actually go to work, and there's a position open in Virginia, and I went ahead and put my name in for it because this was do or die for me. I got to get away. I got to get out of here. And found out later that week, I got that position. So I went back to my wife's family's house. She was staying with her parents, knocked on the door, and I said, would you move to Virginia with me and start over? That's it. I didn't apologize. I just said, will you move to Virginia, start over? And she said yes, and it floored me. I mean, she'd been gone almost 3 months, and it floored me. So we moved to Virginia. We started over. And while in Virginia, we had two little old ladies that came, Jehovah Witnesses, wanted to share Jesus with us. And I don't agree with the Jehovah Witness teaching. So I said, sure, come on in. I said, here's the only thing I'm going to ask is that we just read the Bible. And we started reading the Bible with these two old ladies every week. We didn't know anybody else. They were the only friends we had. We had each other and we had them. At the end of that year, I fell more in love with Jesus. I was sober. My wife was my best friend. And one of those little old ladies turned her life over to Jesus and left the Jehovah Witness religion.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of amazing. My aunt gets cancer during that time. Um, she was my aunt, but she was in many ways like my little sister because she was mentally handicapped. So we come back to Hartford City because she's not expected to make it.
Hmm.
So I transferred back to Hartford City. And when I came back, we plugged into a local church. There were no kids. It was the house church.
Mm-hmm.
There was about 18 people there, and that was it. It was in the basement. And we just started serving the Lord and started doing children's ministry because we had kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how the ministry journey started. Fell in love with Jesus. He changed my life. And it started out, I just wanted to serve. What can I do? Okay, I'll shovel the snow. What can I do? Okay, I'll rake the leaves. Okay, I'll go pick up those people. I'll set out chairs. I'll do sound.
Sure.
And okay, I'll teach a Sunday school class. And that's kind of how the journey began. I just fell in love with Jesus.
Just that token of let's make a commitment. Let's start. And
He changed my life. He brought my family back. He saved me. So
yeah. That's incredible. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know any of that. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. I knew like tidbits, pieces here and there, but did not know the whole thing. So now, was that with the Neal family?
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
So it begins there in the basement of that house, which they had served out of there for
since 72.
Yeah, I was gonna say at least decades. It had to be 2 decades
Yeah.
at least, because I can remember as a kid riding by and the sign was always there. I didn't know any
Yep.
different. And so started kids ministry.
Yeah, when we were in Virginia, they did church in schools. I thought that was so cool.
Interesting.
They would do church in schools, and so I remember I asked Reverend Neal.
Like, hold on, like through the week or
No, on Sundays.
Okay.
Yeah.
So gotcha.
So I asked Reverend Neal, have you ever thought about doing church at one of the schools? He goes, well, never really needed to. And I said, well, what would it take to get outside of these four? I just felt if we could get out of the basement, we might be able to do something. What would it take to get outside of these four walls? And he says, well, if we can fill up, we'll move. And so I kind of made it my goal. And I've always been kind of an evangelist at heart, just really good with people, love people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just started inviting people. And it's pretty easy to do because I have a big family. Started with my family and invited them. And we filled up like within 6 weeks. We went from 18 to we had like 50 people. And we ended up moving into the junior high. We were there for 3 years. And then we started to build out here north end of town.
Wow.
So.
What a rapid rise. I mean, and you've always had a magnetic personality.
Yeah, so
you're someone that people want to follow, want to be around. You have that persona, that charisma about you anyway. So it doesn't shock me. The speed of it is interesting to go from 18 to building the facility you guys have.
Yeah, and it's been amazing. Like it's really been a God thing from not just the building, but we built a youth building during COVID. And what most people don't realize is we don't carry debt as a church. We have a debt-free policy. We're not going to borrow money to do anything. So if we can't pay for it, we're not going to do it. And God has provided. He's provided all of our needs out at the church. We're doing 2 services a week now on Sunday. I think we've got a little over 400 people that attend faithfully. So it's been a good ministry. God has been faithful. I give him all the credit. I still don't know why I'm in ministry. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trusting the one who does.
So is this your full-time thing, or do you do something outside of that?
So it is my full-time thing, but I also am the Blackford County Veterans Service Officer.
Okay.
So I do that part-time.
At the courthouse?
At the courthouse.
Is Mr. Osborne?
Took over for John. John retired at the end of December due to some health issues, and I took over for John.
So I remembered seeing him back in the fall. He
Yes,
was
sir.
still up there. Okay,
Yep.
I didn't know you were up there now. That's good to know because, I still encounter a lot of folks that are looking for veteran services, my mother-in-law being one of them. So,
yeah, it goes back to, that story there. It goes back to my father-in-law. My father-in-law did 28 years in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Was in Vietnam, did 2 tours, was a tunnel rat, and he had a lot of health issues, cancers and skin issues, and emotional issues, and he just couldn't get anybody to help him.
Mm.
And I told my wife, I said, it just breaks my heart for these veterans that have been through much more than what I have.
Sure.
I am blessed. I didn't have to go through a lot of what they have. I said, if I ever had a chance to help them, I would do that.
That's
And as
fantastic.
John wasn't doing the greatest, him and I were talking one day, and he said, you ever thought about doing this? And I said, actually, I have.
Yeah.
He goes, I think you'd be a great guy. And so really I get to be an advocate
Yeah.
for vets. And it's been a real blessing being able to do that this year.
Well, that's great to know. And boy, you talk about a guy who will intimidate you to your core. Uh, yeah.
Mr. Oswald was also a Marine
Yeah.
and a school teacher.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. That's great news. I did not know that.
yeah. And then I still serve on the school board.
Okay.
And
How
that's
long
it.
has that been? You've been there for a while.
This will be my 8th year.
Okay. I knew it had been at
This
least
is year
6.
8. So
Okay. Going to continue that?
I believe so. We made a lot of change, and some of the things that was really I was really passionate about was, driving up that wage for our employees.
Mhm.
Teachers just aren't paid enough. They're still not paid enough. Improving the overall quality of our schools and just bringing in newness. I feel like we've done a lot. Our pay has went up like 40% in the last 8 years.
Yeah.
So I want to keep driving that, want to keep pushing that. So I'm going to keep doing it until God replaces me or says, don't do it anymore. Or my family says, don't do it anymore.
Well, we have some incredible schools here in Blackford County, and I'm very fortunate that I've worked in multiple school districts, and now that I get to visit multiple school districts in my current position, I get to see what other school districts are doing with buildings a similar age to ours. Because most of the buildings are built in that 65 to 75 range. Most Blackford County schools are, if not the nicest, some of the nicest. And a lot of schools I visit are really incredible, but they've had new additions, and within that building program, they've taken the addition to the building and then incorporated that remodeling into the rest of the building. Whereas we've had the additional Sutton Center put onto the high school, but we haven't added the addition at the junior high in Parkside. That combination, that was
Correct.
what, in 90s? It was
Yeah,
in the
95,
90s. Yeah.
something like that.
But really, since then, it's just been updating and upgrading, but no addition to those buildings. And I think Northside had some additions, Southside did as well at that time. But that was probably the last time we saw big changes to Blackford County schools. And through all of that, this is just where I'm at. What I've seen in the past 5 years has been incredible.
Yeah, I really wish people from our community could step outside of our community and see some of the other schools and see how other schools are ran. I think they would come back with a new, maybe just a new outlook on and really a new appreciation for our schools. I know I have. When we traveled, when we were in Virginia, they had 33 kids per class, and my daughters were actually meeting in a trailer because the classes were so full. When we were in Ohio, we had no air conditioning. It was brutal, and again, we had like 28 kids a class.
It's like being back in William Reed.
Yeah, I remember those
Crank
days.
the windows out.
Yeah, I
All right,
remember those
kids,
days.
it's just sweat. You'll be okay. Drink it if you're thirsty.
I didn't have air conditioning growing up at home, so it didn't bother me. I don't know what I do now without air conditioning, but
it's so interesting to me. I've been thinking a lot about, my kids and this generation where people talk about they're soft or whatever. And my kids are soft. By
Yeah, mine
comparison,
too.
I mean, they've been pampered. And I did that on purpose. I just didn't know the outcomes. But no, they're great. I'm just playing. And they're listeners too, by the way. So
Yeah.
they're going to hear it. But I've been thinking a lot about that. When we were kids, we didn't just leave because our parents said, get out. We left because it was so hot.
Yeah.
in the house that when we got on our bikes, we felt a breeze.
Yeah.
There wasn't air conditioning in our house. And then also with that too, think about the stress level of kids today. And that's a real thing. I wonder if we were better, and I don't wonder, I think I realize that we were better able to manage our stress levels in our early teens through our, through our adulthood due to the fact that we were managing our behaviors on our own. We organized the baseball game down the street. We organized the pickup basketball games. We weren't being told, hey, you're going to be on this team and we're going to travel and play here, there, or everywhere. We were doing that ourselves. We were managing our outcomes on our own. If that older kid shoved you down, you had to figure out, am I getting back up and taking a swing? Or am I going to take it this time, hoping that later on I'm going to get mine? I was the later on I'll get mine guy. And there were others that weren't. There were the others that were getting back up and swinging, and that was their thing. I'm a long game guy, but but our kids haven't had to have that. They weren't just put out to play for 8 to 10 hours a day.
And we did. I mean,
We did.
really, from the time we got up until it got dark, we were running.
They had no idea where we were on our bikes. They had
Yeah.
no idea we were out at the pits.
Yeah.
Pits.
They had no idea. And
Right.
yet, there's no question. I think mental health wise, we were healthier growing up.
But those connections were happening in our brain at a very early age at a critical time, and
Yeah.
where I worry about that with kids today. Are they making those decisions, and are those synapses happening for them? And they're not. They're
One of-
not, because they're not in that position.
One of the things I've been a big advocate, and I keep fighting our administration with, is recess.
Yeah,
We
gotta
have
have it.
3 recesses,
Gotta have it.
and every time I turn around, it's 2, and sometimes it's even 1, and I'm fighting. I am telling you, I'm fighting. 3. Give us back these recesses. Get these kids out. Being behind a desk all day is not helping.
Boy, play is critical.
Man, we need to be outside. We need to get that blood flowing. We need to get that stress.
Yeah.
Um,
The endorphins that are happening in our bodies within that physical movement.
Dodgeball. We need to bring
learning.
dodgeball back. Are we allowed to do that?
I hope. We played dodgeball at Madison. I don't know
Remember
why we can't.
dodgeball at William Reed, though? It was up against the
The
wall.
wall.
Yeah.
Oh, and kickball if you got it up on the roof.
Wow.
Man, you were the king.
Yeah.
You're the man.
Yeah.
Ah, gosh. So on the school board, running a church, got a great family. What's next?
I just want to serve this community. I
Love it.
really do love this community. I remember there was a time I said, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. And God brought me back. And now that I've been, like I said, I've been all over the world, really. I love this community.
Yeah.
I love the people in this community. And so I'm happy to be here. And this is it,
There's something super special about it. I don't know what
Yeah,
it is.
I just-
did
I
we
just-
grow up in a magical time? I don't know, but
yeah.
I don't believe that we are living in our own heads going, oh, I wish that was back. We know that the 80s and early 90s are gone.
Yeah.
We know that.
No more Kerr McGee.
Or Swifty.
Yeah.
The parakeet, all that fun stuff. But Kermit.
They had the best fountain pop.
They did, man. Was Tank working there at that time? You remember Tank? Gary Cole?
Yeah,
Gary
yeah.
just passed away not long ago.
Yeah.
I always had to arm wrestle him every time I went in there. He would make me arm wrestle him. Oh my God, he was so strong. But no, you're right. I mean, we live in a great community, and part of this podcast has been just a way to serve and share.
Yeah.
To share the people that love this community. There's enough there is enough negativity aimed towards our community
Yeah.
where I wanted to show, hey, we got some incredible people that live here, that love this place, and that because of Hartford City, Blackford County, they are who they are. And I think you and I are both in that boat. We've had a lot of people we've grown up with that have moved on and done incredible things, and a lot of people we've grown up with that have not made it.
Yeah.
But because of our our love of this community, we're still here serving, and I appreciate you for that for sure.
Yeah, and I listen to your podcast. I listen to just about every one of them.
I
I don't think
appreciate
I've missed a one.
Wow, man,
But
that's I'm
one of the
humbled.
things that I really enjoy about it is you're allowing our voice to be louder, and we need that. The people that love this community, we need to hear their voice. It needs to be a little louder. There's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of people that don't believe in the community, that don't love the community. Here's a great platform to come on and just be loud and be
Yeah,
heard,
yeah.
because it is a good community.
It's a great place.
And that's what I've enjoyed about the podcast is brings back so many
Oh,
memories that
brother.
man, it is amazing. Like I'm listening to the podcast and it's like it's taking me back to the 70s and the 80s and 90s. I'm like, I remember that.
Yeah, it's crazy. While you were talking, we were sitting here talking about William Reed. I was thinking about that day the lady drove her car into the playground.
Oh yeah.
I wasn't out there. I was at the previous recess. But we all saw the outcomes and we knew the kids that were out there. Um, Boy, what a scary time that was, you know. I love William Reed. I lived across the street from there, right up into its closing, and not long after it closed, we moved. We bought a house in the country, but I loved raising my kids here.
Yeah.
Um, you know, one of my and they've heard me say this, so it's not a surprise. But one of my disappointments has been that they weren't near as Blackford High School spirited as I was.
I don't know
I
that
am.
anybody was as Blackford High School spirited as what you was.
Well, I love Blackford County High
Yeah,
School.
I
Man.
wish your kids could have seen you back in the day
Oh, I'm glad
because
they didn't.
yeah, but it hasn't changed. That spirit's still there.
So I've got my old cheer plaque up on the wall, and a lot
Yeah.
of people come in, they look at that, and they're like, "What, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we were killing it. We were on top, man."
I don't remember, but I felt like there was some really, I wasn't into sports because I was really drinking a lot then, but I felt like we had some pretty good teams back then
Oh, we did.
and some amazing
We
cheerleaders.
did.
We had some school spirit. Remember the
Ugh.
pep sessions, and
Oh, they were so alive.
one of my favorite pep sessions ever was Dwight Horsley going to dunk the ball.
Got a dunk. He did it
know,
in junior high.
Yeah, I remember he'd pull up his socks and put on his wristband and headband, and
Man.
he'd run down that floor like he was Michael Jordan. And
Yeah. And then, throw the ball up and then grab the rim.
yeah,
Hey,
but
Dwight, if you're listening,
we love you, buddy.
we love you anyway.
It was great. Like, I mean, I get fired up. I want to go play after just thinking of that. Like that fired me up back then.
Oh gosh, man. So Dwight and I grew up like a block away from one another.
Yeah.
And when we were kids, that just brought back a really funny memory. I saw him get in his first fight,
Oh yeah.
and we didn't know what we were doing. We're kids, but I remember he beat this kid up, going pow 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 the whole time,
Wow.
saying that every time he'd
Oh, he
swing.
was saying
He
pow
was
pow
saying,
pow.
pow, 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 pow. It was like watching Batman. Pow, 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 pow. We were all like just dumbfounded that he is like narrating his own fight.
Wow.
Man, we had this old sawmill down there. It was right across from where Hildebrand's laundromat was. Oh, me and Wittig used to spend a lot of time at the laundromat. Our parents did laundry together. We'd throw purses out on the road, hooked a fishing line,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody'd stop to get the purse. And as soon as they would get out, we'd pull the purse in, and they'd freak out, But what a great place! It was so incredible. It was a magical place to grow up, that's for sure. And the fact that we were able to just freely roam,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there was danger afoot. There was. I was chased by cars multiple times. We were doing dumb stuff, but you always felt like,
Cars with lights on them or just cars?
well, when I've got a car, I did get chased with. I think it was, oh man, George, or not George, Fred Foreman. He was
Yeah.
the first person to pull me over. I think I was 16 or 17. He pulled me over for loud exhaust in my truck.
Yeah.
I was racking pipes off all the time, just dumb stuff cruising.
Pipes were big back then.
Oh, buddy, you had to be loud.
Air shocks, pipes.
Oh, air shocks. I forgot about those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never had a car. always had the truck or,
Yeah.
an old junker. But man, good times. I'm glad you were able to stop by. Now, I noticed as you were talking, and I said, I don't typically prepare for anything, but as I was downstairs right before you came in, I had a question run through my mind that I wanted to ask. And I think you've noticed I've got something on my hand because I've seen you.
I
You
haven't
have it?
noticed. I did notice.
Okay, well, I thought you were looking
Okay.
over like, what's on his hand? Because I had to write it on my hand because I was like, God, if I don't find a piece of paper, I'm gonna forget. So my question is, and it's about just your think about you were talking about that beginnings of losing. I don't know how else to say it. Your first dad,
Yeah. Yeah.
and when you were what 6, I'm
Yeah.
guessing. So to through this journey, what's the biggest surprise?
I think the biggest surprise is that there's a creator of the universe who saw me in Little Hartford City, Indiana.
Ah, wow.
And he said, I can use that guy.
Ah,
And when no one else chose me and no one else wanted me, the creator of the universe said, that's my guy. And I hope that gives people hope. And along the way, I've seen that as I've reflected back. I've seen teachers that he's put in my path. I've seen mentors that he's put in my path. And he's been there the whole time. I didn't always see it, didn't recognize it, but he's always been there. And I hope for that person that maybe is listening that maybe they're at rock bottom or maybe they're going through some stuff and maybe they don't feel loved or accepted, or maybe they've had some issues, that God sees you, he hears you, and he loves you. That's the biggest surprise. Like he loved me. Like,
it's an incredible
yeah.
thought. It's
Out of all the people,
out of all the things,
out of everything.
out of every, I mean, that's, me, I'm not typically speechless, man. I've got something to say about everything. That's it.
It's real, and I'm nobody special. It's
No, I think you are.
yeah,
I
but
think a lot of people think you are too.
but it really is, it is the Lord. Like I said, the older I get, the less I know.
Yeah. That's the
You
truth.
know,
Oh, brother.
and I knew everything and everybody when I was young back in the day.
Yeah, I got to put this out there because I was thinking about this earlier too. Um, those moments in the early '90s when we're really reaching, struggling with you were struggling with alcohol addiction. I struggle with alcohol as well, and just trying to figure out who am I?
Yeah.
What's my purpose? And I think it's really interesting that of what you just said. It brought me back to that of we don't know. We're not born with this, this label. Here's what you're here for, and it's through that journey, through those struggles, through those moments when you're at your worst,
Yeah.
or at your best, or just in mundane times that something is going to influence you. Now, I hate to say, how that looks for each person. And I think for everyone it's different. But there's that moment where you just have some clarity and it makes sense all of a sudden. And I think you're right with, folks that are out there struggling, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes open. Don't be afraid to recognize it when it appears.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're afraid to recognize it when it does appear to us.
Yeah.
Hey, that's it right there. We have permission to move forward on it. Man, that got me.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, keep doing what you're doing, my man. I know you're helping a lot of folks, and I enjoy watching your journey and seeing what your kids are doing. And
Hey, my kids are Blackford proud.
they are too.
They're teaching in the schools and loving every minute of it. So
Good.
proud of all my kids.
Boy, that Kaufman name's going to live on.
True story. I didn't mention this, and I feel like I really need to. Um, my niece was struggling when she was in high school, so we picked her up and let her move in with us, and she stayed with us for a couple years, and she kind of broke that cycle. She became the first one in her family to graduate high school. She went to college. She's an accountant. She's just graduated Ball State.
Nice.
She bought her first house. Um, so I love seeing that, what God's doing in her life. She comes to church every week. Um, and then this past year, we brought in a 15-year-old, and she'd had a really traumatic um, past and had some rough experiences. And she's staying with us, and we're just so excited. We're actually looking at adoption. She doesn't know this, but we're going to ask her in the next few weeks to come and just be part of our family permanently
Oh man.
at the age of, well, she's 16 now, but she was
Yeah.
15 when she moved in. And so we got another girl. So we're still just loving kids and loving our community and see if
I
we can
love
make a
it.
difference. So
Man, that's awesome.
the adoption's huge. I've had a lot of people
Yeah.
ask, like, why now?
Yeah.
She's 16. She's gonna move out in a couple years. And again, it goes back to me being wanted.
Yeah.
And this says, we want you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah. It's bigger than.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It-
Awesome.
So
Brother, thanks for coming in. Everybody, thanks for listening in. We appreciate you. We're out of here.